And welcome back, fantasy baseball fans. This is Fantasy Baseball Camp Season 2, and spring training is upon us. I'm Wes, and with me today, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Tommy. How you been, brother? It has been
I'm
a
doing
long time, man.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's good to be back. I told my wife, I said, you know what happened today? And she said, what? She couldn't care
Oh,
less. I said, it was the first spring training game, and she just rolled her eyes. She's like, oh, it's gonna be 6 months of nothing on the TV but baseball. And
she's like, "Oh God, here we go. Settle
yeah,
in."
I was excited. She could care less.
That's hilarious, man. Yeah, it's been some time. Before we get started here, hit that follow button, like button, leave us a 5-star review. Um, if you're a new listener, welcome in. And if you're a returning listener, we do want to apologize for kind of the abrupt end to our podcasting season and baseball season last year. Look, man, life kind of got in the way for us. Tommy had a new kid. Michael was expecting another kid. So even though we have, probably 15 years experience each playing fantasy baseball, we do this part-time. We do it because we enjoy it, right? So look, it is what it is. We do want to apologize for that, but hey, we're back for season 2, and we're looking to try to put out an episode probably, once a week, something like that, to help the listeners, help people that are, potentially getting into fantasy baseball, or, you know, trying to focus on head-to-head points leagues. So for us, a lot of the content that's out there with your major podcasts, your Fantasy Baseball Today, maybe your Baseball America podcast, things like that, a lot of it focuses on Roto and 5x5 leagues, categories, things like that. But we feel like the majority of people, listeners, actually play head-to-head points, and that's what we're best at. Look, even though Tommy and I and Burns and Coach Avery, even though we all have like multiple leagues we play in, our main league is a head-to-head points dynasty auction values league with contracts and minors. So, when you hear us talk about fantasy in this league, in this podcast, typically it will be focused on head-to-head points. Now we're going to mention some roto and some other things in there, but in general, head-to-head points. So, Tommy, how you feeling, man? You ready for spring training? You ready for the season to start?
Yeah, I am more than ready. I'm actually ready for any free agent to sign. I think there's like 25% of the top 50 are still left. The Boris Big Four are still left. We'll talk about that
Oh,
later.
man,
I'm
don't
excited.
get me started on Boris. God.
Yeah. As a Red Sox fan, it's kind of been a pretty glooming off season. There's still some hope. Monty's still out there. That's who I want to really change our off season around. But overall, I'm ready for baseball.
I can't really blame Ohtani. Like, his decision was probably the most impactful decision ever in free agency. So I get that being slow, but you got the 4 Boris guys out there that still haven't signed. Like, come on, man.
I,
Like,
I
just
saw
come
somebody.
on.
I saw somebody tweet the other day is okay. Once Blake Snell signs, then the offseason gets going. Then we can really
Yeah, right.
get the hot stove. So
Yeah.
that's what we were saying. Just Ohtani, okay. Just Yamamoto, okay. Now
And look, they might screw themselves, man. What's the chance that Snell has to sign a 1-year prove-it deal after winning a Cy Young? Like,
I
come on.
think their values go down every day. I think Boris overplayed his hand.
I think he did too.
The teams, they need the teams more than the teams need them at this point.
Yeah, and we don't agree with Rob Manfred very much. We certainly have our differences. We disagree on things that Manfred does a lot, but he did come out and say that he wants a signing period for baseball, and I can't say I think that's a bad thing.
Never going to happen, but
I agree. But
it puts all the leverage on the owners.
Yeah,
It'd basically be like, hey, if you don't sign within the signing period, you can only sign a 1-year deal or something. There has to be some punishment to it.
yeah,
And
I agree.
that again goes all to the owners. So that's
So
never gonna happen.
for today's episode, we're gonna do a short recap of our 2023 breakout and bust picks for me and Tommy. We're gonna talk about some noteworthy offseason moves, maybe some trades, maybe some signings. And then we'll cap it off with some late season performances that you might have missed if you tuned into football and forgot about fantasy baseball. Maybe some players that are trending up that have an up arrow next to them, and maybe some players that you need to look out because they got a big red arrow down. But it's been a long offseason, man, and I'm ready to get started. So, so Tommy, do you remember your 2023 breakout picks?
I do. I had some successes and I had some failures. My breakouts were for a position player, Corey Seager. It's hard to say the breakout. He's always kind of been semi-elite. But I really thought with the shift happening and coming to Texas, this is year 2 in Texas, that he would break out. And I was correct. Corey Seager ended up finishing with 493 points for the season, which is one of the top shortstops, if not the top shortstop. And it hit hitting 327, 390, 623 slug. So he killed it. And aside from missing some time with a couple different injuries, he only ended up playing 119 games. He was one of the best fantasy players. I think he would have won the MVP in the AL if it wasn't for Ohtani and him missing those games. So I think I nailed that breakout, if you can call it a breakout, because he's always been a top player.
Yeah, and I think at the time, if I remember correctly, whenever we were talking about that, you called it as a breakout because where he was being drafted versus where you thought he was going to be meant that he would probably break out. So there were controversy on that, but hey, man, World Series MVP, probably hit the biggest home run of his life. Like, man, I don't know that there's been one or two moments that I remember in the World Series where I got like goosebumps. That was one of them, like the Jorge Soler home run, the Bryce Harper home run in the NLCS, wherever he hit the 2-strike home run against the Padres and to put him in the World Series. Like that was that type of home run. So I'll be honest, I got to give it to you. I know it might be controversial because of his success, but I'm going to give you a green check mark there for the breakout pick.
Well, can I give you my other breakout from a pitcher?
Yeah, go ahead on that one. Yeah,
knock myself off. Garrett Whitlock. That's a homer pick, definitely a homer pick there. But I thought Garrett Whitlock, he was an RP eligible player. I thought he was going to take a step forward. He's going to be asleep. He was basically free. You weren't paying anything to get him. I thought he was going to take a next step. He ended up dealing with some injuries. When he was pitching, he wasn't the best, and so I flopped on that breakout pick. So if you listen to me and drafted him, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was kind of right there with you on Whitlock because he was going to have opportunities for innings, right, in the starting rotation, and injuries got in the way. Some other things kind of hurt him. I mean, the stuff was kind of there, but he just didn't necessarily succeed. So I don't know. I'm curious to see how that plays out for him in 2024. Whether the Red Sox actually leave him in the starter role or put him back in the pen. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, right now it's a battle between Tanner Houck and Garrett Whitlock for that 5th start, assuming they don't sign Monty. If they do sign Monty, yeah. I assume they're both in the pen, which is fine by me because it makes us one of the best bullpens in baseball.
Yeah,
what about you?
I agree.
What about you? What's your breakout?
Well, so you mentioned Tanner Houck, and that's a great segue because Tanner Houck was my pitching breakout for the year, and I would just say that it did not go as planned for Tanner Houck. Like he's got this stuff. I mean, he had shown that he could pitch at the back end of the pen, and he can succeed at the major league level. He also had some injuries that got in the way, but ultimately he just did not have the year that we were hoping for. Especially you were hoping for as a Red Sox fan. He just left a lot more to be desired, man. You're like, God, he's just right there. I wish that he could just put it all together, and I don't think that he ever did. So that was the first one. What are your thoughts on Houck before we move forward?
Yeah, I still think he has room to grow. I'd be okay if they traded Kenley and he became the closer. I think he'd be a dominant closer. He did it in 2022 for a couple months, couple games, whatever it may be. And I think he was just fine. So if you bring in a starter, because we can't develop starters, obviously. Previously, we got Andrew Bailey now. Maybe things will change, but I'd like to see him in the bullpen. Both him and Garrett Whitlock. Put him in the pen, make it one of the best pens in baseball, and call it a day.
Yeah, get what you can out of Jansen, right? And then just kind of move forward. Look, Jansen's on the decline. I mean, he's been great, but you might as well just get what you can for him and kind of move forward. So my next one was, God, this was so frustrating because he was a top round draft pick. You've been waiting and waiting and waiting for him to pan out. Andrew Vaughn, man, like he spent very little time in the minors. He was, first round pick of the White Sox. He was the best college back coming out of the draft, and you're just like waiting for him to take off. And going into the 2020 season, you're looking at the White Sox roster and you're like, man, this could really be something. Jose Abreu was gone. He was in, Houston. So Andrew Vaughn was getting full time at his natural position at first base. And you're like, he's going to break out. All the pieces are in place. And then he just kind of stagnated and just didn't show much power. Didn't really hit the ball in the gaps, man. When I watched his swing, his swing just did not look good. He wasn't hitting the ball with authority. His average exit velocity was not great. So I gotta give myself a negative on that one, man. That one hurt.
I think you said it.
I didn't like that.
I think you said it in too many words. You said he just didn't do this, he didn't do that. You could just finish it. He just didn't. Andrew Vaughn just didn't.
Yeah, he just didn't.
I was with you. I remember him being drafted second and like a first baseman. They never get drafted that high. He was going to be the next guy. Yeah. But I feel like he didn't have the same hype that like Wyatt Langford and Dylan Cruz have. Like those guys, they're going to work out. Now, well, I'll be wrong when they don't, but I feel like their hype is way higher than Andrew Vaughn ever was, even though Vaughn was well hyped.
Yeah, like if you remember Vlad when he came up, they were like, "Oh my god, first base prospect, best hidden prospect we've seen ever."
That was hype. That was hype.
But like for Andrew Vaughn, like he was that guy at the top of the draft, right? He was like Spencer Torkelson. Him and Spencer Torkelson. Torque came a couple years after or a year after his Golden Spikes winner, right? But Andrew Vaughn was that guy for the White Sox, their first round pick, man, and he just hasn't shown and lived up to the hype right so far. And honestly, with the status of the White Sox, I can't see him living up to the hype. So I hate to change my tune like 180 degrees on Andrew Vaughn, but I don't see a path to him becoming like a top 10 first baseman in fantasy.
So he's going from a breakout to you can't even call him a bust because he's not being drafted high enough to be called a bust.
Yeah, that's the kind of season he had, man. He's just a guy. He's not even a dude,
So I can talk about some of my failures. Moving on to busts, I called Kevin Gausman a bust. Don't really want to admit it, but I thought with the shift, he was a really heavy ground ball pitcher. He relied a lot on that. He gave up a lot of hard contact on the ground. I just didn't think it would work out. And boy, I could not have been wrong. I think he finished with 11th most points per game format. He's being drafted as like the number 4, number 5, number 6 starting pitcher right now. He was fantastic, and I love him on my fantasy team. So I didn't actually get any shares of him because I thought he was going to bust. And for that, I'm sorry, and it sucks. But if you get like a 10% success rate, these breakouts and busts, I think you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, and so in points leagues, he finished as
number 11.
The 11th starting pitcher at 486.5. So yeah, man, I gotta agree with you. I think, and here's the thing: is I've never really liked Gausman, but he consistently finishes in the top 15 starting pitchers. And,
ever since he went to the Giants and worked with Andrew Bailey.
Yeah, and when he was with the Braves, there were flashes there where he could be really good. Once he went to the Giants, man, something clicked. That splitter started hitting. And he's become a true, I hate to say it, but a fantasy ace, man.
Yeah, he's fantastic, and anybody's happy to have him. Pitched in Toronto, it's a good ballpark. Shift clearly doesn't matter. Mostly good lineup support. This is probably one of the bigger down years they're going to have in 2024. But Kevin Gausman, opposite of a bust.
You're drafting him going into 2024, though, right?
Yeah, I probably won't have any shares in him just because where I want other players. But he will be a top 6 at the worst case starting pitcher off the board.
Yeah. But the guy I want to talk about is your next bust. Obviously, because I'm a Braves fan, I'm
going to give myself partial credit for that, and that was Michael Harris. Following the 2022 season, he just outperformed every one of his expected stats. He came up late. It was a relatively small sample size. I don't have the games in front of me, but he ended up getting 414 at bats versus 505 at 23. So he had a pretty good sample size. I was wrong there, but he just outperformed everything. He was doing too much. Not to mention, he was being a bust because of where he was being drafted. Yeah, I mean, he was a 2nd, 3rd round pick, and I just didn't think he'd live up to that value. And I was partially right. For his season lines, he ended up with a 293 average, 331 OBP to 477 slug for 808 OPS. That's pretty good. It's not a fancy stud, but it's pretty good. The reason I'm giving myself partial credit is because pre-All-Star break, he had a 725 OPS. That's basically league average for where you're drafting him second, third round. Yeah, that's not it. Second half, post All-Star break, an 878 OPS, which is well above. I don't have the WRC plus in front of me, but I bet it was like a 20-25 for the second half, which you're probably getting right at your return. So I'm going to give myself partial credit. For the season, you did not get your rate of return. For the second half and the playoffs, you're probably pretty happy.
Yeah, I think Michael Harris going into last season was probably the favorite to bust amongst all of the fantasy gurus and whatever, the experts. Like, he was the number one guy that I know that I've listened to people talk about. There's absolutely no way that he can repeat what he did. His batted ball profile just doesn't match what his performance was, this and that. And in the first half, they were absolutely right, man. Like, he just did not live up to it. But I mean, he turned it around in the second half. He ended up with a 291 average. And I will tell you, I think he was at like 230 or 220, at the break. And look, as a Braves fan, obviously I'm biased. I love watching him play, but he was also the guy where you're like, you watch him play and you're like, man, he could be a 30-30 guy. He could be, I'm not going to call him Corbin Carroll. He's not quite there. He's a poor man's. He could be a poor man's Corbin Carroll. But where he was being drafted last year, top 2 rounds, top 3 rounds, like, man, I just couldn't buy into that. I just, there's no way.
He finished the season with 18 home runs and 20 stolen bases. I think with a good, even average first half, he could have been a 25-25 guy.
Yeah.
30-30's probably pushing that. Maybe more development. He's still young. He's only 22. He could be a 30-30, but I think 25-25 is a realistic stretch. I'm not saying the medium outcome.
I definitely think he can get there this year. I think he can. So I'm going to talk about my first bust. I want to talk about the second bust, but I'm just going to mention the first bust. The first one is Nestor Cortez, and like, honestly, I just don't think that needs much explanation. Cortez just wasn't great. He was hurt. He had a lot of injuries. He was like a 5+ ERA. He had a career year, and the stuff, just speaking strictly stuff, just isn't the type of pitcher where you're gonna think that he's gonna repeat year after year after year, right? He's the type of guy where you got to see him do it every year. But man, him having a sub-3 ERA in the new environment in Yankee Stadium, like, I just couldn't buy into that. So he was my first bust. All good and well. I think he was a pretty common bust pick. But the second one I got to talk about, which is, I want to get your vote on this, man. I had Fernando Tatis as a bust, and at the time, at pre-draft season or draft season last year, Fernando Tatis was still going, end of first round, early second round by ADP. And considering he hadn't played in like 2 years, he had like 2 surgeries with the wrist and the shoulder and the motorcycle accident. Like, I was like, no way I am paying that price for Fernando Tatis. And so if you look at his points, and, as we like to talk about points, he finished as the number 14 outfielder in points. And I'm going to tell you the names that he finished around, okay, in points. So he finished with 466.5 points. The other 2 players that's good, right? Like, the other 2 players he finished by with the exact same amount of points, standard, of course, is Spencer Steer and Randy Arozarena.
Yeah.
Those 2 are not first round players.
Those are fifth to 10th round players, depending.
Yeah, right. That's a mid round guy that you can feel confident in. But he's certainly not. He was not a first round talent last year. So I'm not going to grade myself on this. Do you feel like I get this one right, or will you feel like I get this one wrong?
No, I think you got it right. In the first half, he hit 16 home runs and had 14 stolen bases. So he's on projection for a 30-30 or right at it. 871 OPS in the second half. He had a 665 OPS, which is probably like a minus 80 or plus 80 WRC plus. That's not what you want
Yeah.
out of your 12th round pick, let alone your first round pick. I'd call him a bust. His overall finish stat lines was 771 OPS, 25, 29 home runs. So, he surpassed 25, 25, which is great, but he didn't give you pretty much anything else.
Yeah, like you're looking at him as a dude that's like 30-30, potential 40-40 guy, right? Like he's talent-wise, if we're talking talent, he is not far off of Ronald Acuna, right? And matter of fact, 2 years ago, or I guess 3 years ago at this point, he was above Ronald Acuna. So the talent's there. So I guess how are you looking at a guy like Tatis going into 2024?
I think he's still going to be drafted as a first round pick just because of his potential, and he's done it, in 2020 and 2021. He had a 937 and a 975 OPS. He went, especially in 2021, he had 42 home runs and 25 steals. So those are there. The potentials are there. He had a weird 2022 between PEDs and suspensions and injuries and everything. So I'd feel better if he had a bad first half and a good second half versus what happened, because it's easier to explain. He's still going to be drafted as a first round pick, but I will probably not have many shares of him, if any at all.
I probably won't either. I just, you're hoping for a discount on him because of the season he had. And let's be honest, people in fantasy baseball are just smart enough nowadays, and there's enough info and data out there to say, hey, this guy is better than this, which is true. I do think that he is much better than the 15th outfielder or 14th outfielder. But like, man, I mean, it's been 3 seasons now since he was that guy. So
yeah, he finished with a 449 slug, but his expected slug was 508, which is top 9% in the league. So he had some really bad luck. San Diego's not a good park to play at.
It's not.
So I mean, his WOBA versus expected WOBA is 30 points lower than expected. So I think there's room for positive regression. But I'm still not going to have shares of him.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. I'm probably not going to draft him. That's not to say that you shouldn't draft him in your drafts, depending on where you're drafting and what your options are. I'm just probably not going to be drafting him because I feel like you got to pay a premium for him, and you don't really have that much confidence he's going to give you what you need to pay for the prices you got to pay, right?
Yeah, I agree there.
So
I think you nailed it. To sum it up, he's a bust.
I think I think I would like him, but I would like him in like a late second, early third round, if not later this year. And I just don't know that you can get him there. So, All right. So that was the small, short recap of our 2023 breakouts and busts. Man, this offseason has been, I don't know what to call this. This has just
interesting.
Been slow. It's been like, I don't want to call it slow because we've had some dynamite like signings, and it just didn't feel like a regular offseason, right?
It's not in the least. The number of free agents that are out there, the money that's being spent, there's $1 billion under spend right now compared to years past. We had some big trades. We had some big signings.
Crazy.
So the top of the top has been elite, but as a whole, the offseason has been a letdown.
Yeah, thanks, Scott Boras.
Yeah. I mean, I think first and foremost to talk about Ohtani going to the Dodgers. I think everybody saw that he wasn't coming back to the Angels.
Yeah.
Do you think Ohtani the Dodger changes his value any? He's not going to pitch anymore. He's out for 24 pitching.
Yeah. So I'll say this. No, I don't think it changes his value. I understand that he is now in a Dodgers lineup that is much better than the Angels lineup, but he was 40 plus home runs. Like, I don't think that him being in a Dodgers lineup is suddenly going to make him hit 60. I think he could hit 60. I'm not saying that he can't, but he could also do that with the Angels. And I think he was like less than 200 runs and RBIs with the Angels. Okay, so let's say he gets over 200 runs and RBIs with the Dodgers. I mean, point value, right? Point value, you're net, 20 points, 40 points maybe? Like, I don't think that it changes his value as drastically as what the actual dollar amount that the Dodgers paid makes you believe, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he'll get a couple more RBIs. He'll get a couple more runs. He's not pitching, so the wins don't matter. I mean, if anything, you could argue his value goes down because he's not pitching. But as a pure hitter,
Yeah.
he maybe is 1 or 2 slots higher than what he's drafted previously, but I don't think his value changed. It's just electric to make $700 million contract, $2 million for the next 10 years, and then $68 million for the 10 years after that. Still can't
And if you're in one of those weird leagues, Yahoo leagues or whatever, where you have Ohtani the pitcher and Ohtani the hitter, and you can start them both, then yeah, I think his value absolutely plummets, right? Like Ohtani the hitter as a player is probably like 15th best player in that format, but Ohtani the pitcher and Ohtani the hitter is a clear number one, obviously, because he can get points in both sides, right? But that can't happen this year. So
when you can start him on his start days and then swatch him over in a daily league to hit the other 5, 6.
Yeah, exactly. Daily leagues is another good point.
What about his teammate Yamamoto? What do you think there with him?
Man, so this is one I really wanted to talk about because I remember when Yu Darvish came over. You know, we've been playing fantasy long enough when Tanaka came over and he was like the best thing we had ever seen. And then Yu Darvish came over and everybody's like, this kid's way better than Tanaka. You know, he gets here and you're like, holy shit, he's really good. And we're looking at Yamamoto, and he is a 3-time Cy Young Award winner over in the Japanese league. I forget the name of the actual award. And a 3-time MVP at that, back to back to back. The only other person that has done this, it's happened 3 times in their league. The only person that came to America to play, you know, to the MLB, was Ichiro. He's the only other person that's done that, and it was a pitcher. And I don't know, man. Every single piece of video that I've seen of him, his stuff is legit. I mean, it's legit. Fastball's legit. Command is legit. The slider, the sweeper is a plus pitch. The split, they compared his split to Kevin Gausman, who is consistently said has the best split in the game. And you're like, if this guy really is that good, he's going to be drafted in fantasy as like a number 10 starting pitcher, right? And then let's just assume that he lives up to the hype. I mean, he's going to be up there with Spencer Strider and Garrett Cole, right? Like, is there any loss there?
Let's put it this way. When I watch videos of Yamamoto pitch, it makes me feel something. It gets me all tingly. I wanted him to be a Sox so bad, but there was never a chance in hell that was happening.
And you got 2 kids.
Oh my God. Watching Yamamoto does something to me, man. I think he's gonna be special. What do you think he peaks at in an auction value? We specialize in auction a lot. CBS is saying he's like $26. That's never a chance in hell. He actually
I think that's low, man. I'm sorry. And I love CBS auction values, but the way that they project their auction values is just never how it really happens in auction drafts. So typically in auction drafts, your high-end guys are going to go for a lot more than what they're projected for. And then your mid-tier guys are going to go for a lot less than what they're projected for. That's just how it typically, it's very loaded. It's very front-end loaded in an auction draft.
So you'd say guys get excited and blow their load early?
Yes, 100%. It happened.
So you end up with 2 kids?
Auction draft is the Minuteman draft, you know?
There you go.
It's the 2 pump chump.
There you go.
It happens, man. And so the 26 value, I think or 28, did you say that CBS has him at? No, dude. No, he's 35 plus.
35 was the number that was in my head. I think that's where he lands.
Like, if you're expecting to get Yamamoto for less than 35 in an auction draft, you're wrong. I'm sorry. Yep. If he goes for less than 35 in your auction draft, you got a deal, right? If you get him for less than 30, you got to steal.
Yep. What about his teammate? What about his teammate Taylor Glasnow? What happened to him? He got traded over from Tampa Bay.
This
Ryan
one
Pepio.
hurts, man. You know, I sent you the photo during Christmas where like his banner was still on Tropicana. You know, and there is one thing that is giving me hope for Tyler Glasnow right now, and it's an interview that I saw, and I forget which podcast it was, but he explained his Tommy John surgery in that he had the same injury from 2019 to 2022 before he had Tommy John, and it was the same Tommy John, and he could have MRIs, and it continued to show the same thing, and he needed Tommy John in 2019 because his ligament was torn off the bone, and the MRIs didn't show exactly the fact that it was torn. So that's honestly the only thing that gives me hope. But if I'm being honest, he had a career high in innings last year after he missed the first 2 months. So I have zero confidence in him throwing over 120 innings. None whatsoever.
I saw someone break it down. If the Dodgers go with the 6-man rotation with Ohtani and Yamamoto and all those guys, like a max they can throw is 160 innings, just being on a 6-day rotation, unless some weird things happen. But so I mean, if he hits 160 innings, I saw some people on Twitter talking about 180. No, that's not happening.
Nah.
160, I think you get your return on your money. He's the closest thing to Spencer Strider that there is out there as far as strikeouts, command, not walking, just domination. He just doesn't have the durability. Not that Strider has proven durability. He's still young. But Glasnow is the closest thing to a Spencer Strider-esque talent.
Yeah. And look, let's be honest. If you look at the Stuff Plus models and Command Plus models like we do, Spencer Strider and Tyler Glasnow are right there as far as just pure stuff. Like Glasnow stuff is nasty, man. Like if he could throw 180 innings, I by no means, I have 0% confidence that that's going to happen. If you draft Tyler Glasnow, you need a guy that's going to be an innings eater like an Aaron Nola. You got to bite the bullet and take the 4+ ERA to get a Glasnow. But he could legitimately be the number one pitcher in fantasy if he pitches that many innings. But I have no confidence that's going to happen.
Yeah. I think 135 is my projection of where he's going to go.
Yeah.
So that's enough about the Dodgers.
Yeah.
I mean, well, they did, rightfully so. They spent $1 billion.
Like freaking $2 billion in the offseason. You know, they'll pay it out until 2045.
Let's talk about your Braves and my Red Sox. They made an interesting trade this offseason. Chris Sale went to the Braves.
Hey, nice doing business with you, by the
way. Both sides were happy.
I'm happy with it.
He was on a 1-year deal, 20, 25, or 30 million. I can't remember. In return, the Red Sox ended up getting Vaughn Grissom, who has 6 years of control left. What do you think about this trade? What do you think about their value? Good, bad, both ways.
I'm like, you know, if you guys are unfamiliar and you listen to this, Chris Sale was traded for Vaughn Grissom, right? And in the Braves organization, Vaughn Grissom had no path to playing time. You know, they were talking about platooning him with Kelenic and ways of getting him playing time. And if you read the scouting reports on Grissom, he's a bat first guy. The reason he didn't have a position is because his defense was not good enough at shortstop to play there. He didn't have the arm to play third. Ozzie was at second, and there was just no way he was going to play, right? He wasn't going to DH over Ozuna, but he was a bat first guy. So Chris Sale, you know, for the Braves is like, I mean, what would you call it? Low risk, low reward. So
low risk, high reward. He's an ace.
Yeah.
He's an ace if he's pitching his A game. Low risk, high reward.
Yeah, I mean, do I honestly expect him to be an ace though? I don't. If we get 150 to 160 innings out of him at a 3.2 ERA, let's call it a 1.2 WHIP. That I think, let's call it a 1.1 WHIP if he's got a 3.2 ERA. Like, man, I think that's astounding. Like, I would love that. I don't expect that to happen.
I have 5 years of Chris Sale under my belt. That's not happening. I mean, I wish him the best. No hard feelings. Love the guy. Yeah. He competes, but the pressure's not there to be the ace anymore. There's Charlie Morton. There's is Morton still there? Yeah, Morton's still there. He's got Strider. He's got Max Fried. He didn't have to be the ace.
Morton. Yeah, he could be the number 4 guy and not have to worry about it.
I think his value goes up. The pressure's off. He's not the opening day guy. He goes to a better lineup. He goes to a better ballpark. Yeah. As far as home run factors go, he's never been a home run problem, but I think overall his value goes up. And as far as Von Grissom, he has a job. He's a starting second baseman for the Red Sox until he loses it. So his value goes through the roof. I think it's a win-win both in
Who's he going to
fantasy.
lose it to, though?
Marcelo, if he ever comes up, Nick York, if he ever comes up. But we basically just replaced. Nick York was supposed to be the second baseman of the future. Marcelo at shortstop. But now Nick York's, dispensable.
He's he's fallen off a little bit as a prospect, but their potential's there. I have seen the reports on him. But
so I think it's a win-win for both real life and for fantasy.
Yeah, agreed. So you had Chris Sale last year in our main league.
Mm-hmm.
Are you more inclined to draft him now because he's on the Braves than you were a season ago?
I don't think my desire to trade him, or excuse me, to sign him. What are we doing here? Drafting.
We're drafting.
15 years experience, my ass. Anyways, one too many bourbons. It is a B&B podcast.
It's okay. It is a B&B podcast. And little old makers here,
I don't think his price tag changed. I don't think his value changes that much. Red Sox were still a good team. Braves are obviously better. Yeah. He's getting older. He's not proven he's dependable. So, if you can get him in the late rounds, top 120 pick or something, have at it. But I'm not jumping at the bit to draft him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think both teams benefit for that.
So what about another big trade that went down?
Yeah, so for me, this might be one of the main ones. And after we get into this, we'll talk about the ones that we think are most relevant. For me, I think this might be the most relevant trade for fantasy purposes. Of any of them. So Soto to the Yankees.
So you're burying the lead over here. You're talking about major impacts. You didn't even say who it was.
Yeah, well, there's a little bit of
you're
foreshadowing, I guess. I'm building it up. Yeah. Look, man, left-handed bat in Yankee Stadium.
Short porch.
I mean, there is not a single bit of downside here. So, I mean, my thing is the single trade to the Yankees alone is going to boost Soto's value because everybody knows how good of a hitter he is and how good he could be, especially in that lineup, especially hitting behind Judge or in front of Judge. It doesn't really matter. So if you're in an auction league, if you're expecting Soto to be less than 45, that's pretty unlikely. If you're in a snake draft and you're expecting to get Soto in the second round, end of second round, I should say, probably unlikely. I think this is the biggest up arrow as far as trades go that you could see.
Yeah, I think for me, the one thing that gives it away is his home OPS is 827, 12 home runs, and his away OPS is 1,026 with 23 home runs, and they're both about even, 349 plate appearances, 359 plate appearances. Petco is just not a good place to play. It's not homer friendly.
He's average
240 versus 307 home versus away, and he goes from one of the hardest ballparks to play as a left-handed batter to one of the best places to play as a left-handed batter. So I think his value goes through the roof. His value increased, specifically in a points league. I don't think it really changed too much in a roto, but he's a top 5 player in fantasy now for me going to the Yankees.
Yeah, and so I'll say this: if you're in a roto league, this might not apply to you because Soto doesn't steal bases. But if you're in a points league, Soto is probably, for me, a top 10 at least player in Yankee Stadium behind Judge. That's reality. In an auction value, I would probably pay at least $45 for him. If he went over that, I'd be like, all right, you're making me work for it, but I would take him back in first round for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, for me, he's top 5, but to each his own. I've always been a Soto guy. What about another guy that got traded to the AL East in Corbin Burns? What happened to him?
Man, I don't know. This is another one for me. Brewers in formerly Miller Park. I think this is a great place for him to go and pitch. I don't know that his value could have gotten any better. I mean, it certainly is up going to a really good team in the Orioles and a great place to pitch in Camden Yards. I mean, I don't know that you could get him any earlier. I don't know that I want to reach for him in drafts anymore, like above Strider or above Cole. But I got him as my number 3 guy in Camden Yards.
Starting pitcher, number 3 total starting pitcher.
Number 3 total starting pitcher. Thanks for I should clarify.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. For me, it's Strider, Garrett Cole, then Corbin Burns. So he's number 3, and he didn't have a great first half last year. So you're wondering if he was dealing with some injuries. He ended up pitching to a 3.94 ERA and a 1.14 WHIP. Second half, 2.71 with a 0.98 WHIP. So it tells me if he was dealing with something, he had a problem. He figured it out. So now he's better, assuming he continues that in the next season. Now he's going to do a better ballpark. American Family Field, not the friendliest ballpark for fly ball hitters. Camden, one of the best. They recently stretched out their left field.
Yeah,
you got to hit it 450 feet to get a home run there. Better team around him, better ballpark, tougher division, but he's good enough. I'm not worried about it. I think as value goes up, maybe to solidify him as the number 3 instead of top 5.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think there were some concerns last year because of the numbers and the performance, but I'll be honest, I'm not worried about it. I'm drafting him as my number 3 starting pitcher. So, all right, last trade we got here before we moved on to the next topic. Hater to the Astros. You think if it improves his value, does it diminish his value? Does it stay the same? Like,
well, first off, not a trade. You said trade. He signed.
Signed. Sorry, you're right. You know, it's a bourbon podcast.
Yeah. I think he was already one of the top closers. His value can't change too much, just like Corbin Burns. He's not going to a bad team. He's going to a good team. The Astros are better than the Padres, so take that for what it's worth.
Are you drafting him above, let's call it Edwin Diaz right now?
That's a good question because Edwin Diaz didn't pitch last year, so I'm not really sure how to take it. I think I probably am. Astros are better. Mets are probably going to be horrible, especially with Kodai recently. They're neck and neck. But it's a coin toss. But I think if you told me I had to pick one, I'd go with Hader.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think I probably have him as like my number 3 relief pitcher. I could make the argument for number 2. So Hader is legit. There's gonna be a lot of things out there about him not pitching extra days and so on and so forth. Honestly, whatever, dude. He's legit and you should draft him. So let's jump through a couple of pieces of topics here before we get into the late season up arrows. So a couple of notable things. There's a lot of talk about some young players having opportunity. Jackson Holiday. We're talking about Wyatt Langford, Paul Skeens, a lot of rookies that we're looking forward to seeing in spring training. Jackson Churio signed an extension. So if you're new to fantasy baseball, one of the biggest things you can do, or one of the easiest things you can do to gain value, is to pay attention to the young guys that are coming up like that. And it seems to me like a lot of the young guys are actually panning out a lot sooner. So pay attention to that. Corey Seager it was a hip injury, yeah?
Hernia.
He had a hernia injury. A sports hernia.
So he probably won't be able to be ready for opening day now.
Yeah, he'll be a little bit behind opening day. So Xander Bogaerts is moving to second base. That adds more depth to that position, which was not a very deep position before last season. Now it is. You got a lot of young guys there, and then older guys transitioning to that position. But go ahead.
I'll just say something to note. He won't have it to start. If it's typically 5 games, 10 games to get position eligibility on most sites. So you will have to draft some scrub second baseman to start if you want to draft him as such. But he is guaranteed to be second baseman moving forward for the Padres. Yeah,
you might have to wait until like week 2 to actually start him at second. But I mean, I haven't done my rankings for him at second base yet. But I mean, thinking off the top of my head, he might be like my number 5 or 6 second baseman there. So
yeah. Yeah, that checks out.
You in the range there?
Yeah, let me go take a look real quick. He's probably barely a top 12 shortstop. As far as second baseman, he's
the talent at shortstop is just
I put him above
very top heavy.
Ketel Marte. Nico Horner had a really good year.
Yeah,
Matt McClain, depending on he had a breakout season. He's probably right. He's definitely below Marcus Semien, so somewhere between 5 and 7.
Okay. Bieber's velo is up. Nah, I'm still unsure about that. Outfield is a weak position. We did talk about that, or we will talk about that in future episodes. The three things that I want to bring up. Obviously, the Boris thing, the 4 Boris clients. Whatever, dude. Just freaking sign a deal. It's millions of dollars. Kodai Senga injury. We'll get to that in a second. But the one thing I want to talk about is, did you see the news? MLBPA filed something saying that the pants are transparent and they need to fix it. You seen all the talk about the jerseys? It's a freaking nightmare, man.
Yeah, they filed they filed a grievance and they want it fixed by season start. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money, dude. Fanatics. Hey, by the way, Fanatics is housed. Their headquarters is like 5 minutes away from me.
Really?
But
maybe not anymore. They have to move sites.
Yeah, no. They're the pants are see-through. They're trash. The jerseys are trash. We've seen the names. It's all over Twitter.
The memes have been fantastic, though.
The memes have been awesome. If anything, if any good has come from this, the memes have been awesome. Like it wasn't Pete Crow Armstrong. There was one other one that I saw. The name wrapped around the jersey, and there was literally not enough room for it. Awful.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll see how that works out. I'm definitely not buying a jersey until they fix it because they're trash. But Kodai Senga is the big news. Capsule in his arm. I think David Stearns called it a strain capsule, and they're gonna play it out. How are you looking at Kodai Senga moving forward?
I'm gonna avoid him. He said he has some arm. I mean, we'll know before draft season gets really hot and heavy that what's actually going on there. If you have to have surgery on that, it's 6 to 9 months recovery time, so he'll be out for the season. If he doesn't, I'm still weary that's going to happen again. So I'm probably going to avoid him unless his cost just plummets.
Yeah, look, man. Tommy John surgery is such a routine thing now where you were pretty confident in a guy coming back. Any guy that I have seen that has shoulder surgery has not come back as well. Michael Pineda is one. Johan Santana is one. Man, when you have shoulder surgery, it's just not it's not the end of the career, but you're certainly not the same pitcher. So
I want to know if the surgery was my comment. They said they're going to rest him and reevaluate, but if it comes to that,
pay attention to that news going into your draft season. If you're drafting early right now, like some guys are, most regular people are not drafting at this point, but just pay attention to it going into spring. We'll see how that plays out, but that is the big news for today. So spring training is starting tomorrow, and what we want to do, Tommy, is we want to give a little recap, a little refresher, a little reminder of those guys who skipped out on, the end of fantasy baseball season and joined the football season, and maybe just stop paying attention and stop setting their lineup. If you're in year 2, year 3, look, we get it, man. Baseball season, a long season. It's hard to pay attention that long. It truly is. And this is coming from guys that have played it for a very long time. So let's talk about some guys that might have ended this season on an up arrow that, some people that don't play fantasy as much as we do might not know about.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go quickly. We won't spend a lot of time with these guys, but a couple names is Royce Lewis. You may have heard that one before because time and time again, he's a post-hype sleeper and he does really well, and then he gets hurt. Then he does really well, and then he gets hurt. But he had a really good second half. Maybe he's for real this time. He claims he's going to steal 30 bags this year. We'll see if that happens. I'm still skeptical. I think he's an elite player when he's healthy, but his track record says I'm not drafting Royce Lewis at his price.
I mean, the guy went 1-1 overall. I think the talent's there, and he did have a stretch there where you're like, wow, he could be legit. But am I drafting him in that as price? Probably not. So
yeah.
I'm gonna mention some other names here. You tell me who you're interested in. Davis Snyder ended second baseman for the Toronto Blue Jays. Had a really hot streak to end the season. Zach Geloff came up from the Oakland A's and just mashed, man. Like he just mashed, and there was no protection in that lineup. Nolan Jones, honestly, I feel like Nolan Jones was good all year, and then he just ended the season on a hot streak. And then Seiya Suzuki. So, which one of those 4 guys are you looking at going into the next season?
Yeah, that's an easy one for me. Nolan Jones is the name that stands out for me. 201 shares up. He plays in Colorado. That you get that field advantage.
Yeah.
He was a prospect with Cleveland, got traded to the Rockies. Took him a second to break out, but when he did, I think he's for real. Seiya Suzuki's probably my backup plan there. I think he's a fine third outfielder, but I don't think he's going to be what Nolan Jones could be. Maybe it's a ceiling versus floor thing. Geloff is fine. I don't care about any player at Oakland. Schneider, who knows what Toronto's doing.
Yeah, I think Suzuki has finally acclimated to the MLB, and he's going to be the player that we expected when he came over. It just took some time. If I'm being honest, yeah, Zach Geloff, he might have the talent, but I just don't anticipate he's going to be great in the Oakland lineup because he's going to be the one guy that they have to avoid. I don't know that he's going to get pitched to. David Schneider, I don't know what to make of that. I'm just not buying into it, to be quite honest. But yeah, Nolan Jones is kind of the guy here that I'm looking to draft. Legit prospect in Colorado can definitely hit. Some of the guys that had a second half breakout. I'm going to mention the guy that you want to talk about last. We're talking about Bo Naylor for Cleveland. We're talking about Chas McCormick for Houston Astros. And the one thing I will say about Chas before I get to Casas is he did get a vote of confidence from the GM, from the Astros GM, who was the Braves' previous director, that he will be playing every day. We don't know where. He might DH, might play center, might play right, but he's going to be playing every day. So if he can sustain the performance he had last year, it's kind of interesting as a late round prospect. But let's talk about Casas, man.
Yeah.
What do you got for me?
I think he's going to be the face of the franchise before it's all said and done. I absolutely love Triston Casas, and I'll go to whatever end it takes to get him in every league I'm in. I think he's the first baseman of the future. He's next. I don't want to call him Paul Goldschmidt, but he's got such a good play discipline. He plays in a good field. Pesky pole, he can play with him. Left field. I think he's just a disciplined hitter. He's already one of the leaders of the Red Sox. He's going to be good. He had horrible first half, hitting a 728 OPS. Second half, 1,034. We talked about Soto doing good outside of home and away splits. 1,034 was better than 1,026 for Soto. I think Casas is going to be an absolute stud. So you keep your hands off of him. Do you understand me?
I know.
Point at this camera. You keep your hands off.
So for the listeners, Tommy and I both need a first baseman in our dynasty auction draft, and we both know that we're both gonna. It's gonna be between Tommy and I for Casas.
Go get Christian Walker. Will trade to you.
I'm gonna try and trade for Christian Walker. We'll see
be
how
the
that
same
works
price.
out.
Same
I don't
price.
really have much. I really don't have much to offer, but the one thing I do want to mention on Casas, right? Second half numbers, right? Offensively, I'm gonna compare him to Aaron Judge because points wise and war wise. No, look.
What are you doing, man? Look, talk about him like he's a crap player. Don't compare him to Aaron Judge.
I'm talking about second half numbers. Okay, offensive WAR by Fangraph standards. All right, Aaron Judge was number 15 in the second half. Triston Casas was number 16.
Wow.
Aaron Judge had a 19.2. Casas had an 18.1. Casas was 317 average with a 23% strikeout rate and a 14% walk rate. That is one of the closest strikeout to walkout ratios that you're going to get for a guy that provides that amount of power. All right. He hit 15 home runs. Judge hit 18. He had 38 RBIs. Judge had 35. He scored 32 runs. Judge had 37. Right.
I think the comparison to Judge is flawed, though, because Judge is still dealing with his toe.
I get that. I'm just saying from a points perspective.
All right. Don't hype him up. Don't hype him up so much. We're going to move on.
From a points perspective.
We need to move on.
He was comparable to Judge in the second half. I will be right there with you when we bid on this.
Damn it. You need to get a first baseman because that's not okay.
I know. I'm going to try and trade for one. We'll see how that goes. Couple pictures we want to kind of mention here on the trending up arrow. Tarik Skubal, Cole Ragans, Grayson Rodriguez, Cutter Crawford, Brennan Fat. Tarik Skubal was the number one pitcher in the second half in a lot of statistics. Is it for real, Tommy?
I mean, he had the prospect hype. He got hurt. He came back. I think it's such a small sample size. I mean, his expected ERA for the season was a 2.30, which is even better than a 2.80 than he had. So all the metrics back it up. His Statcast page is all red. I'm skeptical that he's going to live up to the price tag that you have to pay to get him. But I think he'll be good. But I think
scares me.
But if he regressed a little bit to maybe a 1.1 ERA or whip guy and a 3.5 ERA, it wouldn't surprise me. It's still great, but it's not 280 and 090 that he pitched this year or last year.
Yeah. So for me, I do think Skubal is legit. Okay. I am not going to take that away from him. But you're telling me that he's right now being drafted amongst his like the number 5 starting pitcher. Like he's being drafted above Zach Wheeler right now. And I just don't know that I can buy into it that much. All right. Second half, he was 72 innings pitched, 11.3 K per 9, 1.49 base on balls per 9. And, you know, he had a 3.11 ERA. Yes, I think he's legit. The big part for me is like his home runs per 9 was a half a home run per 9, which is huge. Now he plays in Detroit, so there's not a lot of home runs. But I'm not gonna draft Tarik Skubal as like my number 5 starting pitcher. Do I think he could be that? Sure. Am I gonna spend that money on him? That's gonna be like in an auction draft, $35 to $40? No. That's like a 3rd round pick. Like I'm not doing that.
If he falls to me in the 10 to 15 starting pitcher range, which, you know, call it 25 to 30 dollars in an auction league, I probably got a hands on him. But as far as price for what you're paying, guy who cites on this list more than anything is Grayson Rodriguez. Always been a prospect. He was the Orioles' #1 prospect for a long time. Came up and had a horrendous first half. 7.35 ERA with a 1.74 whip. He just walked guys like crazy. A lot of hard contact. He couldn't figure it out. Second half, totally different story. 2.58 ERA, 1.1 whip. You like to see that whip come down a little bit based off of what his ERA was, but 73 strikeouts in 76 innings. Not quite what you projected him as what he did in the minors. But I think there's only up from here. So where you're drafting him with his potential to improve even more, Grayson Rodriguez is who I'm excited about from a late season breakout who continues to break out and get even better for a good team.
Yeah, for me, I agree with you 100%. Grayson Rodriguez, Bobby Miller, Yuri Perez, who am I missing there?
Tanner Bybee.
Tanner Bybee, you know, that's the group of like dudes that are into their second year that could potentially become front-end aces by the end of the year. And, you know, former top overall pitching prospect in baseball. He was legit when he got sent down and came back. He was legit second half of the year. The season performance wasn't great, but he's a guy going forward. And you're going to get the best value out of him to performance of anybody on this list. But so Brennan Fott, I did have a great postseason performance, but I don't necessarily want to talk about that. Cole Ragans, is he legit?
I think we already talked about that. He's fine. It's a tough one to assess.
He pitches for the Royals. It's hard.
Yeah, I mean, 3.47 ERA and a 1.16 whip is fine.
Yeah.
But it's nothing amazing. Again, just like anything else, his first half, not as good as the second half. Against the Royals, he was fine. I'm still skeptical, especially where he's being drafted. He is RP eligible, so it's a SPARP in points league, which is huge leg up if you can get him for a decent price. If everybody else is skeptical as well, but I'm not taking him as my number 1. Maybe not even my number 2 starting pitcher. Maybe my number 2, depending where that falls. But definitely not my number 1.
If you're looking at like Scott White's rankings, he's pretty high up there. He will be the number 1 SPARP. And if you're a new listener, you don't know what a SPARP is. That is in some leagues, mainly CBS and Yahoo. you can have a relief pitcher as a starting pitcher. So Cole Ragans had that right and will have that right in 2024, where he pitched enough relief innings to be a starting pitcher, to insert him into the relief pitcher spot as a starting pitcher. He will be the number one spark for me. But to get him at the price of what you're having to pay is absurd. I would rather wait for like, I don't know, a DL Hall or a Ryan Pepio, in like the second to last round, than to pay like sixth round price for Cole Ragans, who pitches for the Royals, who are not going to win over 80 games. So I'm not saying his stuff's not legit. If you're in a roto league, he can definitely help, but head-to-head points, I just don't know that it can happen because he doesn't play on a great team.
Yeah, the last two guys on this list are Cutter Crawford and Brandon Pfaadt. I think we briefly mentioned that, but they both fall in the same category for me. Brandon Pfaadt has much higher prospect pedigree and hype than Cutter Crawford, who's kind of a sleeper coming into it. They both had slow first halves, really good second halves. Decent second halves, I should say. Someone I'd want is like my number 5 or even a bench player. There's still a ton of room to go up for both of them. They did have better second halves, which is kind of what this segment is right now, but they're nowhere on the level of like Skubal, Ragans, Grayson. But it's someone to keep an eye on if you're looking for a back half of your rotation or a good bench guy is Cutter and Brand Pfaadt.
If you're like in a 15-team league, deep league, these are guys to keep an eye on, essentially. All right, we're hitting right at the hour mark here, so let's speed through these bad second halves and then kind of close it out. So we listed a couple names here of bad second halves that we're looking to avoid in drafts. You let me know which ones stick out to you. So Sean Murphy, horrible second half, injuries, concussion, so on and so forth. Spencer Steer, Lane Thomas, Josh Young, Hunter Brown, and Alexis Diaz. Who are you avoiding most in drafts?
I'm really not high on any of these guys just because of the bad second halves they have. The one that confuses me more than anything is Sean Murphy. Because his StatCast page is electric, his overall season stats were electric. I don't know what his second half would happen. He didn't get all the playing time that he should. Who is it? Travis Darno robbed a lot of time from him with the Braves. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case this year or not. But his first half was basically 1,000 OPS. He was one of the best catchers in baseball. The second half, 585.
I think he was the number one catcher in fantasy points wise going into the break.
I don't know what happened, so I'm scared to draft him. What you're having to pay. That doesn't mean I don't want him, but if he falls enough, I'll take him because I think he's still young. He's 20, not young. He's 29. But he's in an elite lineup, so skeptical. The rest of them, I'm not really high on. Alexis Diaz, again, had a bad second half. I still think he's elite. I think he's fine. I think he got overworked. Reds are going to be good relatively to the league, the division they're in. Hunter Brown, Josh Young, not really sure.
Yeah, I think for those two guys, they were just young and they hit walls, very visible walls. Hunter Brown's stuff didn't diminish, but
Josh Young was dealing with some injuries. He was really good. He got injured. He came back. Yeah. Maybe couldn't figure it out. So go give him benefit of the doubt there. But I'm not relying on him to. He's maybe a top 12 third baseman.
And his injury, he did well in the playoffs. So I think that for me is giving a little bit of a mirage to what his second half was. And look, a lot of it was due to injury. I'm not going to comb over that, but I don't know that I want to draft him for what the anticipation is for his 2023 season.
Yeah, one guy on this list that I probably won't have any shares of because he'll go before me is Lane Thomas. I actually ended up using him a lot last season because he was so good in the first half. And he had a second half that fell off. But he also really just outperformed all of his expected metrics by 10, 20, 30 points in some cases. He just never been, quote unquote, that guy. And last year he put it together and became that guy. But none of the stats are really believed. I just rode the hot hand while it worked. And because of where he finished with points, because of his overall stat line, I think he's still going to be drafted higher as like a third outfielder, maybe a fourth outfielder than he should be. I just am not interested in him at that price. Maybe a bench, see if he can keep it going on, but I don't want him to be in my starting rotation, starting lineup to start the season.
Yeah, he's a classic case of a guy that had a career year and was starting to fall off towards the end, and he's going to get overdrafted because of what the season ending numbers say and not what the actual detailed numbers say. And he had an incredible first half. He was great. But I'll be honest, I'm not interested. I mean, I don't know that I would take him I might take him in a 5 outfielder league as my fourth or fifth outfielder. Like if you're desperate because outfield is so sparse, but bench player at most for me.
I'm trying to find a player who I'd comp him to.
I was thinking Brendan Drury. Like
had one good
2 years
year.
ago. Yeah, and like Drury had a decent year last year, but he was hurt. I don't know. He's a hard comp, man.
Matt Chapman is who I was thinking about. Had a pretty good 2022. No, 2019. That's what it is. You kind of thought, okay, this is the year. 2019. Scored 500 fantasy points. You think this is it? He's going to break out. This is going to be the show. And never really put it together. He's been fine contributor, but Matt, he's kind of my outfield version of Matt Chapman, where I had one good year, and I think everybody's going to be reaching for that Lane Thomas who could be, or that Matt Chapman that could be.
Yeah,
and he probably just won't ever do it again.
And I just don't know that it's going to pay you what you put into it draft wise.
Yep.
All right, Tommy, we are coming up on a little bit over the hour mark here. So let's wrap up with this. Spring trend starts tomorrow. What are you looking for? How much stock do you put into spring training? And let's close it out for the listeners.
I don't put a lot of stock in spring training. You have guys like Bobby Dahlback, who hit like 9 home runs in a spring training, and didn't he make the roster a couple years back? You have guys that completely stink and end up winning borderline MVPs. What I look for is like velocity in pitchers towards the end of spring training, injury reports, where people are batting in the order, where they're getting time. Maybe somebody's getting their reps, and you think they're going to make it, like a Jackson Holiday or a Dylan Cruz or Paul Skeens or Wyatt Langford. Are they going to break camp? And less of this guy hit 350. He's going to be the next guy, which 2 weeks later he can be hitting 250. Small sample sizes.
For me, man, there are countless examples of why spring training numbers do not matter. Jared Kelenic the last 2 years hitting 400 in spring training and then hitting like 192. Man, I put zero stock into spring training numbers. About the only thing I pay attention to in spring training is who wins what job and or what rookies make the roster. That's about it.
Yep. Same here.
Outside of that, spring training is there for entertainment, and it's there for the March 14th matchup where I'm going to go watch Jackson Holiday face Paul Skeens because it's about a 45-minute drive for me. If you're not familiar, the prospect game is now a thing in the MLB, and it's glorious, and I'm into it. So,
yeah, that's one thing I love they added this year was a prospect specific, top prospect game. I'm all about it.
Well, maybe one day we'll all draft in Tampa, and we can go watch it.
You don't have to convince me. I'm on board. Wife says okay. I'm down. We got to get the rest of the lady to.
Hey, the ladies would love it, man. They'd go to the beach and they'd go shopping. So, all right, man. It's been a great first episode. I'm happy to be back talking baseball. I know that you're happy to be back talking baseball.
Yes, sir.
So, for Tommy, I'm Wes. This is Fantasy Baseball Camp. We're on season 2. This is episode 1. Hey, hit that like button, follow, subscribe, submit questions. We love interacting with guests. If you made it this far, we'll see you on the next episode. And that's all, folks.